believe that marriage has made your voice even more beautiful? Y'all heard me say that, right?
Yes.
It's all perfect. It's my code for this is a choice. I'm at a choice point right at this moment to go into judgment or remember the truth. It's like, oh, it's all perfect. The other one I say is all in perfect order. Both meaning the same thing, that life really is perfect. And I've got a couple of good Holmes quotes to share with you that demonstrate this in the Science of Mind textbook. The premise upon which all mental work is based is perfect God, perfect man, perfect being. And one caveat that goes with this. First perfect God, then perfect man. Meaning that the perfection of the human experience is divine. So, let me give you this other one, and then we'll explore this. A practitioner sees his patient, we call them clients now, but his patient as a perfect entity living in a perfect universe, surrounded by perfect situations and governed by perfect law. That's it right there. That's what we believe. So why doesn't the whole world believe that? Why does this not seem to be the way we experience life? Now, we do more and more as a group that believe in the philosophy of the science of mind, believe in these teachings, and do our best to practice them. Not that we're all getting it every single time. We do still fall into judgment. We do still have fear. We do still have things that go on that would not be demonstrating that idea of life being perfect. And most of the people on the planet do that pretty regularly. So, what are we missing here? What's the thing that separates us from, or the human experience from the idea of life being perfect? Well, the answer is easy. Somehow, somewhere along the way, we as human beings connected the idea of met expectations to being the definition of perfection. If it would just happen the way I want it, then it would be perfect. But that's a very limited, myopic way to look at perfection. Perfection, in my definition, the definition I think that aligns with the science of mind is that everything that we experience is a perfect reflection of our consciousness. That's perfection. So whatever is going on is perfect because it matches our consciousness. No, it doesn't. I didn't think that. I don't care whether you remember thinking it or not. The law is perfect. The law reflects into our experience exactly who we are. You don't get what you want. You don't get what you need. You get who you are. That's what comes to you. That's all that can come to you. That's how it works. And yet we still find ourselves frustrated in moments when life doesn't look like we want it to look. And we think something's wrong. But that's not the case. Life is a perfect reflection of our individual consciousness in our individual experience of life and our collective consciousness and our collective experience. We are evolving human beings, spiritual beings more accurately. And we're an evolving species on planet Earth. We demonstrated that this week with the Supreme Court telling us all that it's just common sense. That people that love people should have the privilege of marrying and should have that as a right. Okay, great. Well, was it wrong the other way it was? It's really easy to say it was wrong. But the reason that it was perfect the way it was before was, at that point, the laws of this country that didn't allow that reflected the consciousness of the people. At some level, the balance was still that way. But we're evolving, we're evolving, we're evolving. And then, one happy day in June, the Supreme Court said, you know what? This is just common sense. If you love somebody, you ought to be able to marry them.
Yay.
Why? Why do they do that? We go, oh, they have such awesome power in the Supreme Court. No, they're simply reflecting the consciousness of the people. That we collectively now go, well, of course. Not everybody. You know, There's a preacher somewhere that said he was going to set himself on fire if the Supreme Court did that. Don't you know that boy's in a pickle today? That is a lose-lose proposition. Now, Barbara and I were talking about that, and we said, well, you know, there were monks that used to do that in protest for peace. And we said, yeah, but they didn't make an announcement. They just went and did it and got everybody's attention when they did. It doesn't work that way. So, you know, I'm sure he's on a real steep learning curve this morning. But this is how it works. Consciousness prevails always. You want to change something. Where do you observe it? You see it in your life and you go, oh, I don't like that. Well, don't get mad at that. That's not what's going on. This is what's going on. And I'm not really referring to my body. I'm saying that inside of my psyche, inside of my consciousness, there is something that is facilitating through the law of spirit as a demonstration that looks like this thing that I say I don't want. So where do I change it? Do I protest? Do I go out and try to make what's happening in the world change? Well, that's one way to do it, and a lot of times we try that. But what really happens is that we think a different thought. A new thought creates a new outcome. And that's why every week we sing a song about peace at the end of our time together. It's an old song. Some people have said, can't we sing something else? Well, we could. But what a great way to end our time together to say, there's peace on this planet because of me. Because I can be peaceful. Because I'm choosing peace. Peace is relevant and present. And the more I am clear about who I am and knowing that, the clearer and more beautifully peaceful this world is. And not just peace, anything else you want to name, anything you want to put it to. And there's one element of this that really, really works for me. It's the idea that how we perceive that out there does impact it. If we name it wrong, we're naming it as being so. So when we take on a fight with something in our lives and point at someone or some condition or some circumstance and make it wrong, what we end up with is the thing we don't want. How much protesting and complaining and carrying on has there been about the Confederate flag? On and on and on and on. Was it the death of those 9 people in Charleston that did that? No. It was the forgiving nature of the people that remained. It was so graceful. It was so beautiful. It was so completely present as I laid that flower at the steps of that church. It was palpable. And it resonated out all over this country. And they said, why don't we get rid of that Confederate flag? Put it in a museum. And everybody said, okay. And it was done. Because of the peace and the generous, loving nature of those people in Charleston, South Carolina, that thing that had been fought over for generations is done. Wow. Yay. That's how peace works. Yeah. It applies to our lives in every area. I had a conversation that was really poignant in this area with one of my colleagues recently. An amazing icon in our movement. Her name is Eloise Oliver. I admire this woman. She's in her 80s. She's an African-American woman, grew up in Florida. Parents were sharecroppers. Grandparents were slaves. And she moved at some point from Florida through the country and ended up in California. She had a slew of kids. She was domestic help. And I'm not sure what her husband did, but one thing that she used to say about him is that he was an alcoholic. And about the time that she found the science of mind and decided this was her path, he told her she was in a cult, and they ended up splitting up. So she was moving through her classes, and as she got into ministerial class, she was still saying about her husband that he was an alcoholic. And one of her classmates said, "Do you really believe that about him?" She said, "Yeah, I see it all the time." She said, "Is that what you want?" "No." "Well, what if you didn't call him an alcoholic?" And she got it. She said, okay, I won't call him an alcoholic anymore. I'll just see him as this presence in life that blessed me with these children. And although we can't live together because he's just too violent when he's drinking, I will let all that go and let him be who he is. And Eloise finished her training and became Reverend Eloise Oliver, or as they now call her lovingly, Reverend E. And she talked to minister into starting a church. The church in Oakland, California is up on a hill. And they call it the Church on the Hill. And she had to figure out in her taking her classes up there how to get up on the hill on the weekends to be at the services on Sunday. The thing is that the buses ran during the week to take the domestic help up the hill to work in those beautiful houses up there and to bring them home at the end of the day, but not on the weekends. So she had to find a way to get to classes. She also had a moment in time where some of the other African-American women at that church said, I've had enough of these white women in this church. They're not respecting us. They're not giving us our due respect. And Eloise said to them, I don't come here for the white women. I come here to learn this thing. I'm going to learn it. They can't take that from me. So she found a way to get up on the hill and take her classes, and she became a minister. And she talked another minister into starting a church for the domestic help down in the lowlands of Oakland. And he did. And he only needed to do it for about a year because then she got her license and she took over. Yeah, and she built a great work there. When I spoke there, I had to speak 4 times because of the 300 seats in their sanctuary. They had to do 4 celebrations to take care of all the people that were coming. This was not a problem. I enjoyed it. About her husband, which was the point of my story on whatever. In letting go of that idea of him being an alcoholic, he started showing up on Sunday mornings. He would sit in the back of the room next to the door, so he could act quick, because it was a cult, right? And just listen to what she had to say. And of course, his children were there too, because they were very involved in this. And so they're getting it he was getting it from them too, that maybe something important was going on. He'd sit in the back of the room, and then he'd leave right away. And this went on for years, until he started coming to class, sitting in the back of the room, but listening and learning. He was actually killed in an automobile accident, but at the time of his passing, he was in his 2nd year of practitioner studies because she let go of the idea that what he was an alcoholic and began to see him as a spiritual being beyond his actions. This is the path to peace. There's so many ways that we can have this show up in our lives. Make sure I give you this other one that I had here. We did marriage rights. Yes. We talked about the Supreme Court. The idea that life is perfect right the way it is. Not that we like it right the way it is, but that we can change it and make it a different kind of perfection at any moment is the key to taking control of our lives and being in charge of our experience. It's true for all of us, always, without exception. The truth is that we are in charge of what our life looks like. And I have tested this and tested this and tested it. And when I get clear and know what I'm doing and pay attention, I can get there. You see, if you live with fear, you are drawing the thing you're afraid of to you. If you are angry, you are drawing angry and difficult situations into your life. If you're confused, then life looks muddled to you. But if you are clear and certain about the direction of your life, life must respond in kind. It has to. It has no choice. The law is absolute. So the work is within us to know the truth, to create that perfect experience that we also lack. I often tell people in class, I said, your life is perfect, even if it's a perfect mess. It is a perfect reflection, or you could say attraction of the things that are going on within your mental thoughts, within your consciousness that are creating your life without exception. And when we accept this, life looks different and we are suddenly completely in charge. And here's my story for the day. Because that's what we do, is Barbara and I get up here and just put it out there, what's going on in our world. I've been the president of Centers for Spiritual Living for 3.5 years now. I'm having an amazing experience doing the work that I'm doing. But since we started, and I was, of course, involved in creating the coming together of two organizations with a totally new model, a new structure, I was the one one of the ones that was certainly involved in the intricacies of this. And one of the things that I really focused on in that work was how our governing model worked. We've had history in two different organizations, and some things have worked very well and some things not. We created a model that had a spiritual leader, a president, and 3 directors that each had responsibility for certain areas of our organization. The structure was the spiritual leader goes out into the world and represents our teaching in the world. And that the president, who is elected, focuses on the operation of our organization, the structure, the organizational aspects of who we are as a spiritual movement. And we went to work just like that. About a year into it, one of the directors resigned. Actually, it was closer to 2 years when he resigned. So then we had a model with a spiritual leader, a president, and 2 directors. And there was quite a bit of talk about changing the way it worked. But what I found early on in that process is that it looked really personal and directed at me. That there were people that just didn't want me to be president. And they were on the leadership council, and they were insisting that I leave. By one way or another, they wanted me to go. Well, those that felt that way left. And I remained the president. However, the idea that maybe we should revisit the structure stayed alive. And we began looking at it. And this past February, the Leadership Council brought forth a resolution. We called it Resolution 9. What a poignant name. And the idea was that the Leadership Council wanted permission to change the structure. And the delegates that came to Las Vegas to hear about this said, we need more information. And I actually spoke against it because it was so vague and so unclear. And I asked that we visit. I said, I'm fine with visiting this thing and looking at it and seeing how we should do it, but we have to have some structure around it. And people agreed. So we added an amendment that said by July 1 that we would have a recommendation, the leadership would have a recommendation to our organization, to our field, for some changes in how we would be structured. Okay, so we went to work. We created 4 different groups that worked on 4 different things: the Office of the Spiritual Leader, the President, and the Executive, which was the directors. A lot of people were thinking they really wanted an executive director rather than these 3 directors and rather than a president. So we looked at that. And we played with a lot of ideas, and these 4 groups reported back to the Leadership Council, and the Leadership Council met a few weeks ago. And we took their ideas and started playing with them. And we came up with a plan. And tomorrow, before this recording will be posted on our website, it will be revealed what the elements of that plan are. And here's what it is. We're going to have a spiritual leader. That person right now, who is Dr. Ken Gordon, will continue his work as spiritual leader. We will not have a president anymore. And we will not have directors. We will have an executive director. So we'll have a spiritual leader, an executive director. We're going to raise the office, the position of chair of the Leadership Council, to an executive team position. And we're going to have a new position on this executive team. And it's called Field Champion. Field Champion. And I'm looking at this as we're creating it, and I remember that when we had these groups, one of them was looking at the presidency. And they said, why do we need a president? And I laid it out for them. I said, you must have someone here that represents the field. And they must have authority. And they must play a major role in this. And then we came up with this idea of Field Champion, and I looked back and I said, oh, John, you created this. I even came up with the name in the shower. And you know what? this is good. It's not a full-time position. I'm going to be here more. I don't have to run for it. I have 2 more years on my term as president, and that will move into this position called field champion. I will be responsible for ethics, for community relationships, regional support, the minister practitioner and member councils will be my responsibility, and I will be responsible for licensing, affiliation, and education.
Yes.
I know. Those are all the things I really like to do. I will no longer have any responsibility for staff. We'll leave that to an executive director they'll hire. And I wish them well. I really do. So I get to do the things that I love to do. Now my ego could take a hit and go, why can't I just be the president? It doesn't matter. It just flat doesn't matter. I don't need a title. I need to know that I'm doing something meaningful in life. I need to be connected to the people in this movement that, like so many of us, go out every day living by these teachings, living our lives and practicing this thing called the science of mind. And we'll leave it to Ken to go out and teach the world about it. But we've got 400 communities around the world, actually more than 400 now, that need someone to be their advocate, and that's going to be me, at least for the next couple of years. And I'm really excited about that. So I wanted to share that with you today and point out that it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect, that I am happy with it. I want you to be happy with it. And this is how life works. I cannot give you an example that doesn't apply to this same idea. Everything that happens in our lives, the stuff we love, the stuff we don't, it's all perfect because it's a perfect reflection of our consciousness. Holmes said, perfect God, perfect people. I'll change the word to people. We are perfect. We are perfectly in charge of our experience without exception. Live by that creed. It's all perfect. And it's as wonderful as you want to make it. I love you so much. Thank you.